Hi there guys, Ken here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Friday everybody. And in today's video I am using a brand new to me pencil set. This is the Derwent Graphitint 24 count water soluble pencil set. Now I currently own the Graphitint pan paint set, and I was really excited to see how these pencils may compare. And I'm also using a new to me paper as well. This is the Soho Urban Artist Heavyweight Sketch Paper from Jerry's. Soho is one of their house brands. This paper is acid free. It's about 135 pounds and it's got a pretty nice weight to it. So I really wanted to try it with these water soluble pencils to see how it may or may not handle a little water here and there. Now this journal, or should I say sketchbook, is spiral bound, and it gives you really easy access to the pages, as you can see. Now I divided it down the middle with a piece of tape, and to the left hand side I did go ahead and get my composition transferred and took a cool gray, or should I say the cool gray pencil set, just to make sure that I had everything sketched in. Afterwards, I went in with a number 2 synthetic round brush. This also happens to be a creative, well, this is not also, this is a Creative Mark product, which is another house brand of Jerry's. So using quite a few Jerry's products in this composition. I decided to do the sky blue. So I took the indigo blue and I did shade a little bit darker at the top, as you would always expect your sky to be. And I used lighter pencil pressure as I came down towards the little mountain that I have sketched inside the landscape here. Now this is a landscape in a jar, and you guys may remember I did something similar a couple of months back where I painted a landscape inside like a wine glass or goblet, and I just figured that this was a really cool different spin on it. Now I'm using a water brush to dissolve these pencils, and I'm here to tell you they do dissolve pretty well, even for this to be like a heavyweight sketch paper versus being a mixed media paper or like a watercolor paper. I wasn't sure how they were going to perform, but to my surprise, they performed pretty well. I'm using a couple of different colors here to shade in the grassy area coming towards the foreground. And then I also use some different shades of red. Now the Graphitint pencils, just like the Graphitint pan paints, are, muted colors. They're basically like, well, in the pan paint set, it's like a watercolor with graphite added. And with the pencils, it's basically a watercolor pencil with graphite added. So you will have this small sheen going across your composition from the graphite that's mixed into each one of the pencils. I think that they are pretty saturated considering the fact that they are muted colors, and the media comes off of the pencil and lays down on the paper pretty smoothly and evenly without a lot of pressure. They're really pigmented and I like that. But Derwent tends to produce a really nice line of products, especially their pencils. So I was really glad to see that these stood up to, or seemed to stand up to their legacy name. Of course, I'm still in a testing phase for these, and we will have a review coming up as soon as I finish that testing phase. But from first impressions, swatching them out and using them on this sketch paper versus a paper that's meant for water-soluble products, I will have to say that I was rather impressed, especially with the way that they dissolved out, blended together. As you can see, I'm using the same techniques that I would use with like a regular set of watercolor pencils, even to where you can make a makeshift palette by scribbling that pigment out on a piece of paper and then using a wet brush to pick the pigment up and paint with it, basically just making a little palette. And that's what I'm doing here to add more saturation into some of the areas that I've covered. Now, I wanted this landscape to look like it was multi-dimensional. So I'm putting different levels of land in it, coming towards the foreground. And I did decide to throw just a little walking path in there just to break it up a little bit. I figured it would be a lot of green coming from the mountainscape all the way down to like, quote unquote, the foreground or the bottom of the glass. So instead I threw in a little path so I could break up that block of green color that I knew would be there. Now, this set comes with shades, or should I say different colors or deeper colors of certain colors. For instance, because I know that might not have made sense. The foreground that I'm coloring here, I use the meadow color, which is a green, kind of muted color, really beautiful and bright and vibrant, especially when the water hits the pigment and it just seems to come to life. And then I used a different shade of green, which is a more darker, cooler color called ivory, in order to add in the shadows, being sure to hit around that path area just to make it stand out more. And then again, taking a water soluble brush, going in and just blending that out. Now, whenever I'm using a lighter and a darker shade together, especially with a watercolor pencil, I am sure to go in and blend my lighter tones first and then the darker tones. Especially when I'm trying to keep sort of separation in the color versus it mixing all together. I hope that made sense to you guys. Now, taking that cool gray pencil that I originally used to actually kind of sketch in the actual jar that the landscape is in, I used that to do the mountain in the back. I wanted a cool gray down color to make sure that that far away mountain really pushed back in the scene, and you'd be able to see that there is going the area where there will be a lake in between the farthest mountain range and the mountain range that is sort of in the mid-ground. I actually really enjoyed doing this particular landscape. These pencils, they felt normal. I guess it's because I really love using watercolor pencils. Now, of course, the color range is different, and in my head, I kept thinking to myself that this felt more like drawing, and it could be simply because I realized this is like a colored graphite pencil versus something that is quote unquote watercolor paint rolled in a stick, which isn't exactly what a watercolor pencil is, but hopefully you get the point that I'm trying to make. So I'm just going back and forth, blending in colors, adding in saturation, putting in more depth where I felt like I needed it. Now you'll see me use my finger because I did realize that the pencils will smudge just a little bit, and that actually worked with kind of blending some of that pigment in to get some more saturated color and to just kind of help smooth out some areas. So that's another technique you might want to use whenever you have a watercolor pencil of any type that has just a little bit of smudgeability to it. And graphite tends to smudge, so kind of expect that out of this particular set. I'm going in and coloring in the actual path there, which is using this same cool gray tone, if I'm not mistaken, that painted the mountain range. I tried to use the same set of pencils, the same color scheme throughout the entire painting to keep color harmony. You guys hear me say that all the time. And you also see me do that trick where the pencil hangs up over the end of the tray a lot so that I'll remember which pencils I'm actually using in the composition and grab a color that I hadn't been using the whole time. Now, I'm going to shade in the top here, and I'm actually using the darker or deeper red tone of the set, and I think it's called, well, it's not really red, it's like a reddish brown or more like a off burgundy color. I cannot remember what it's called, but I did use it with a really light pressure in order to get a lighter color. As I said earlier, these pencils, the pigment lays down pretty well from them, so yeah, or should I say the graphite, whatever you would like to call it. And so it can get saturated really quickly if you color too hard or press too hard. Now, I took that palette just so that I could get me sort of a wash of that pencil color. I wanted to smooth out the texture a little bit more. I didn't want it to look as textured as like the landscape itself. I wanted that top to look kind of smooth, and I mixed a little bit of a green tone into that red because I knew it would brown it out and give me more of a shadow color, just so I can give the lid a little bit more roundness. Now, while that was still wet, I went in with that same color pencil just to add in the little indentation you would see to let you know, hey, screw this off, so to speak, for the lid. And I'll have to say that, as I said earlier, I enjoyed this. I'm going to go in just a few seconds and start to put in the shadow. And I'm actually going to mix every single color that I used in the landscape into the shadow, which you'll get to see in a moment. Well, it's actually not going to be the shadow, to tell you the truth. It's really going to turn out to be the tabletop, which I thought was pretty cool. And then I'll add a shadow on top of it. At this particular moment, I'm happy to be throwing in a few rocks in the foreground. And then I'm going to grab those green tone pencils that I've been using throughout the composition in order to put in some grasses kind of growing around those rocks. I kind of wanted to tie them into the landscape, ground them a little bit more. And then I'm actually going to take the red that I used to do the lid with and paint in some little flowers. I mean, it won't be much detail to them. Just a little indication to let you know that, hey, here's a little flower here. And you'll see that's what I'm doing there. I'm just basically making 4 little dots around any random grass blade that I drew in. And then I'm going to go back in with the wet brush just to activate that pigment so that they don't smudge or move around. And you'll see me throughout this composition also kind of clean up the graphite from around the page in areas that it got or it may have smudged too. It's another thing about these pencils. They will lift and they do erase pretty well too. I noticed that when I was originally trying to sketch out the composition. I'm going to do more work with these in the background. A few more paintings before I get to the review, but I feel like already I really do like them. Now here is where I took all of the colors that I had in the landscape, and to be honest, originally I was painting in a shadow here. But once I actually got that pigment dissolved and saw how those colors blended together, I decided to make it a tabletop. So I just kind of took a pencil, excuse me, and drew some lines to indicate like this may be wood panels directly onto the wet paper so that I could be sure that that wouldn't move. Gave it time to dry, and then I went back in with the cool gray pencil, and this is where I'm actually putting in the shadow. Blending it out with that small round brush that I've been using, trying to kind of soften up the edges. And it's really easy with these pencils because the truth is they will reactivate pretty well even after you've kind of dissolved them the first time. Not as much, they will leave pigment there, but you can soften the edges, and I did like that. I'm going to jump in with a white gel pen just to add highlights to let you know that this is a clear jar, and put on all of the major highlights. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up, guys. Hopefully you like this. Seeing me experiment with these pencils for the first time. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. You can share the video because it's caring, and you can jump in the comment section and let me know what you think. Have you used them? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll know when the new content is coming out. And you can also hit up the video description for all of the relevant links: Facebook, Patreon, Etsy, and the most recommended product list. Just keep painting and crafting.